I was checking up on the news, and I saw a headline that read, "The Thai shrine bomb suspect is Chinese." And you think, okay, first of all, they said that the shrine bomb suspect was Turkish, from Turkey, and now they're saying that he is Chinese. Do you think that Turkey and China have anything to do with that bomb? Do you think that Turkey and China are into bombing little religious icons, little religious idols? No. The bombing suspects, both of them, and I think they think there's around 10 of them, are all Muslims. And come to find out that the individual that they think is the prime suspect at the moment, he is part of the Turkestan Islamic movement. He's a fundamentalist jihadist Muslim. His only connection with China is that he has perpetrated terrorist attacks against China in the Islamic region near the Afghan border. Muslims perpetrated that attack. They have a 99.9% monopoly on terrorism. It is something you may want to think about, Mr. Abbott, before you bring in another 50,000 of them. And Ms. Merkel, before you bring in another 800,000 of them. And Mr. Obamanator, before you fill America up with them. God does not like religion. He despises religion. The term that he uses throughout the Torah, prophets, and Psalms to depict institutionalized religion, where the vast preponderance of the people have identified with a religion and they've intermixed their religion with their politics, is Ephraim. Ephraim is the universal term to describe a religious movement associated with the Lord, that would be with Satan, that has been presumptuous and has claimed authority where it had none, that is clearly errant, wrong, that is led by arrogant, self-serving individuals, that is rife with all manner of religious imagery and idols and artifacts. That is Ephraim. Yahowah describes Ephraim at great length in the book of Hosea and uses Ephraim as the example of behavior that is deadly. Ephraim is what the United States represents today. This concoction of politics and religion, of arrogance. And so Yahowah's warning to Christians in the United States and in Europe, because this particular entity, this is that which is against Yahowah, which Roman Catholicism was born in a great animosity for Yahowah. And so this particular warning is based upon the plague of death that was Shaul, the founder of Christianity, the author of half of its New Testament. He is named by name later in the prophecy. So this is a condemnation of Christianity. It says, woe, alas, oy, declaring a warning regarding an extreme lack of understanding and the prevalence of widespread delusion to the presumptuous, arrogant, and conceited leaders, the crown, the religious and political authorities and institutions, of the intoxicated, those who are inebriated, those whose reasoning and judgment have been impaired, of Ephraim, of that which is divorced from God and estranged from the covenant as a result of being religious. So then the flowers, the blooms, the attractiveness, and the reproductive aspect of the plant, its beauty and desirability, its honor and status, foolishly fades away, is dishonored and disgraced, becomes senseless and vile, is treated with contempt, and is rejected. Its attractiveness, which beneficially, by way of relationship, was first and foremost a valley of olives, will be overcome and struck down with intoxication. The first statement was one that all you have to do is make the connections, understand what Ephraim represents, and that's not hard to do. Ephraim is the centerpiece of Yahowah's prophetic testimony in the book of Hosea. And once you've done that, it's just straightforward. It's a warning against the widespread delusion and the ignorance that is spread by the leadership of the world's religious and political institutions. The second statement is clearly symbolic, a metaphor. God likes to talk in agricultural metaphors because people of all time have been able to understand that. We understand that a plant's most attractive aspect to our eye, and therefore to God's, is its flower. People love flowering plants. They're attractive. It's the part of the plant, though, that is also responsible for reproduction, that which flourishes. And so it says the flower's beauty, its desirability and honor. This Ephraim was once part of the covenant, now estranged. Was once part of God's family, no longer. So its attractiveness, its desirability, its status has foolishly faded away. They gave it up. Its attractiveness, that which would be appealing to God, which beneficially, by way of the relationship, was first and foremost a valley of olives. A valley of olives means a conduit, a channel for which oil could flow, olive oil. And olive oil is, just as the flower is symbolic of the attractive, reproductive, life-giving nature of a plant, olive oil is, throughout the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, a symbol for all of the benefits associated with, the abilities associated with the set-apart spirit. Enlightening, life-giving, healing, nourishing, all of these things. And so it says that all of that is overcome. No longer is Ephraim part of the family. They squandered all of that. And they squandered it because their judgment was impaired. They were inebriated with the wrong spirit. Their responses were ill-advised. They were essentially comatose. God then continues, pay attention. Look and see. One who is restored by being uncompromising and is also steadfast and bold, adamant and inflexible. He's the one who approaches Yahowah. So the whole concept of religion is to be tolerant, to be accepting. There was a email that a friend sent me just this morning. And this email says, it's on a sign, it's in front of the Gethsemane Lutheran Church. And it reads, if you hate anyone because of your faith, you're doing it wrong. You see, faith is presented to be accepting, to be tolerant. There are no wrong ways. You know, every faith is like the spokes on a wheel, all leading to God. They all have their divine attributes. Well, God is saying no, exactly the opposite. Pay attention. The one who is restored by being uncompromising. He prevails by being firm and resolute, rigid, and is also steadfast and bold, adamant and inflexible. Why? Because God is reasonable. He is rational. Faith is not reasonable. It's not rational. Political correctness is the epitome of unreasonable and being irrational. And and political correctness, their famous bumper sticker, coexist, and has all of these religious and political signs that are all supposed to get along with one another when most of them are adverse to each other. And, here's in political correctness, we're going to accept Islam and Muslims. And yet, in Islam, Muslims treat women as if they were rubbish. They're engaged in religiously sanctioned pedophilia and rape and mass murder and terrorism. And yet it's good to accept that. Now God says exactly the opposite. No, it's bad. You need to hate that which is harmful. You need to embrace that which is good. You need to exercise good judgment. And then when you do, recognize that God isn't capricious. He's not like the nincompoop that promotes the humanist, secular humanist view that is all-inclusive, all-compromising, all-accepting, totally tolerant. Because to be such is to be irrational. It's to be immoral. It's to be untrustworthy. It's to be irresponsible. So if you want to approach Yahowah, do the opposite. You can't be intoxicated. Your judgment can't be impaired, because if your judgment's impaired and you're intoxicated, you're not going to be uncompromising. You get into a compromising position because your judgment is impaired. If you want to be uncompromising, don't associate with religion. Disassociate from it. Don't compromise with it. You don't ever want to be told by an enemy of Yahowah, you behaved well. You compromised. Be adamant. Be inflexible. That's what God respects. That's because that's how God is. He's adamant. He's inflexible. He's determined. Those individuals approach Yahowah. Then he says, in a manner similar to a downpour, with hail, a storm which separates and divides, like a flood of waters, a great and powerful flood. He will wash away. Well, this is a two-sided application here. There's a good side and a bad side on this washing. Yahowah says that he's going to use a flood, a storm. Now, I think this is both figurative and literal. And the washing away on this side, no, it's good to be washed by Yahowah. And you just finished talking about a channel for olive oil, which would be a channel for bathing us in the Spirit. But who is being washed away? You don't want to be washed away. It's one thing to be washed, but he says he will wash them away. And this is not a gentle rain shower. This is a downpour, a zerim, an outpouring of water from the sky, a thunderstorm with hail, a deluge, which separates and divides, like a flood, a great and powerful flood. It's going to wash away. So think about it. What is he washing away? In this context, what is he washing away? He's told us to pay attention, to be resolute if we want to approach Yahowah. And prior to that, he's told us that there exists a huge percentage of people who are political and religious and intoxicated. Their judgment is impaired, which is the purpose of political correctness. And that these institutions represent Ephraim, and there's a warning to them. So who's going to be washed away? Those who are paying attention and resolute, or those whom the warning was issued, those who are deluded, those who are deceived, those who are affiliated because their judgment has been impaired with human, political, and religious institutions? Well, that's not a hard call, is it? All you got to do is think. Yahowah is saying, I'm going to wash away all traces of religion. Now, I said that was a double-edged sword, both cutting on one side and killing, and on the other side, creating a beneficial separation. You can't create an Eden condition on earth without washing away religion and politics and militarism. You can't do it without washing away ignorance and delusion. There was no ignorance, there was no delusion, there was no religion, there was no politics in Eden. These things need to be washed away for Yahowah to set up a 1,000-year celebration of Sukkah here on earth. And so he is announcing that this is a last day event, that Ephraim represents Christianity and socialist secular humanism, the religions of intoxication, of impaired judgment today, and that he's washing them away, all traces of them away. So if you're a Christian, rather than finding yourself in God's loving arms, you're going to find him pushing you away, washing you away with a torrent of water that will cleanse every trace of the muck that you created here on earth. Your residue, all traces of you, washed away. Then he says he will establish a home for restoration and for settling down spiritually to approach the land. What does he have to do before he can settle down? Before he can create a home that is a spiritual home, a nuach, a quiet place of serenity, to be relaxed and brilliantly enlightened, tranquil in the relationship? What does he have to do to make that possible? Well, so long as religion and politics and militarism exist, it's impossible. Can't be done. So the very first thing is he washes away all traces of religion. He speaks of that. There's going to be this enormous upwelling of water that's going to flow from both sides of the Temple Mount. One, into the Mediterranean, outward that way, the other down towards the Middle East and Africa, through the Great Rift. The Dead Sea is going to be flooded. It'll have an outlet, become life again. But as those waters stretch out over Europe and the United States on one side, Africa and the Middle East and Asia on the other, all traces of religion will be washed away, so that then God can establish a home for restoration, for rest and settling down spiritually, for being tranquil while being brilliantly enlightened, all to approach the land with his hand. Yahowah says that not only is he going to do this, but for those who then can approach this spiritual realm of restoration, this home for enlightenment, that we will do so by reaching out to his hand. With his hand he will lead us in. With his hand he will wash all traces of religion and politics and militarism away, and then lead us home. By militants on foot, by animals with their idols, by those who go forth proclaiming slanderous myths based on false testimony, by those who seek to gain an advantage over their adversary, by those whose words besmirch and denigrate the reputation of their foe. They will be trampled. They will be trodden down by an oppressive enemy seeking to destroy them. The presumptive and self-important rulers of those whose reasoning and judgment has been affected by their consumption of an intoxicating brew, causing them to stumble away and to be forgetful and forgotten, of those divorced from God and estranged from the covenant as a result of being religious. Wow. So here now, God is telling us that it is that something horrible is going to happen. That, yes, God is ultimately going to wipe away the stench of religion. But before he does, there are going to be jihadists, militants on foot, pouring into Israel, just as he had explained in Yahowah 17 and 18. Now in the 28th chapter of Yahowah, re-examining this time. By militants on foot they will be trampled. Whom? Ephraim. Before he washes them away, their lifeless carcasses, they're going to be trampled by militants on foot. Europe and the United States, they're importing them. They don't even have to go very far. By militants on foot, by animals and their idols, by those who go forth proclaiming slanderous myths based on false testimony. Couldn't be more false testimony than Islam, or of course even Pauline Christianity. They will be trampled. They will be trodden down by an oppressive enemy who will just seek to destroy them. The presumptive and the self-important, the arrogant, claiming unwarranted authority, the moral failures who are prone to agitation, those blowing smoke and seeking adulation, those falsely claiming authority in the majesty of God, those presumptive and self-important rulers, those wearing the crown of victory, those claiming to be victorious, those claiming to be the head of human institutions, those who are self-important, arrogant, who have gone way beyond their authority, agitating all the while. Those whose reasoning has been affected because they're intoxicated with religion and politics. Of Ephraim, of those who are divorced from God and estranged from the covenant, you're going to be trodden down. You know, it's the reason we spoke so many days in a row of what's occurring in Europe and soon in the United States with this influx of Muslims by the millions, is that they're bringing in the very enemy who will destroy them. That's what God is predicting here. Those who are religious, those whose judgment has been impaired, those who are politically correct, the tolerant, the accepting, will be trodden down by the very individuals they accepted, they tolerated, they embraced, they offered sanctuary and a home. They're the ones who will tread them down. So then it will come to be that the bloom's attractiveness and appeal, its fine ornamentation and place of honor, will languish and wither, shriveling up for having been played for fools, which was initially at least beneficial by way of the relationship. He is reminding us that when you are compromising, when you are tolerant, when you are accepting of that which seeks to destroy you, which is committed religiously to destroying you, that anything that was attractive will be destroyed. Whatever thing that you had that was beneficial will be gone. You will languish and wither, shriveling up for having been played a fool. It was first and foremost a channel for life, for enlightenment, for nourishment and healing, this valley of olives, similar to the firstborn. From Bukura, the firstborn child, from Bakur, an ingathering, a harvest. Yahowah is telling us that as was the case with Ephraim, and really as is the case with Christianity. Christianity didn't start off in the hinterlands. It didn't start off in the land of the Goy. It didn't start off separated from Yahowah. No, it started with a corruption of Yosha. It started in Jerusalem. It started right where God was acting. It then created delusions and all manner of institutionalized myths to go away from God. But it started with God and then moved away from Him. That's what this says. You know, we were, Ephraim was, Christianity began at the right place, at the right time. in recognition of, at least initially, of the right individual. But from there, they became intoxicated and deceived, their judgment impaired, and all manner of lie was slathered on top of the truth. And they accepted the lie. They were not uncompromising. And because they accepted the lies, they could no longer see the truth. And because they were no longer rooted in the truth of Yahowah, of Yosha, of the Torah, of the land, of Jerusalem, they shriveled up and died. It was the intent that they be the firstborn, Bekurim, to be adopted into Yahweh's family. Ephraim, the very symbol of Bekurim, to have been made immortal on Pesach, to have been made perfect on Matzah, to have been adopted into Yahweh's family on Bekurim, to have been part and parcel of the covenant. But all of that was sacrificed. Just before the summer fruit, beneficially and relationally, he will look upon and find delight in the one who is observant and understands, according to her repetitive and restoring witness, in the palm of his hand. So here you have those that are now estranged, who have been trampled down by the very foe that they embraced, that they accepted, just as Europe is doing today and the United States will follow. Trampled down by the very individuals that they accepted. That at this same time, Yahowah is saying that just before the summer fruit, the fruit that grows in the summer is harvested in the early fall, around Teruah. Just before the summer fruit is harvested, Teruah, there'll be awakening, when beneficially and relationally, he will look upon and find delight in, ra'ah, he will see and pay attention to, he will prefer, he will consider and select, choosing for himself the one who is observant and understands, the one who inspects and perceives, the one who views what he has to say and pays attention. According to her, this would be the set-apart spirit. This is going back to the channel of olive oil, of her repetitive and restoring witness, her ood, her ongoing and enduring testimony, which records beyond the expected point in time, subsequently admonishing and warning, exhorting and enjoining, also enveloping, and yet again still affirming and returning forever in the palm of his hand. Again, the hand. Why the hand? It's not only the first letter in Yahweh's name. It is Yahowah reaching down and out to us, to lift us up, to guide us home, to hold us, to enrich us, to welcome us. And how do you find yourself in Yahweh's loving embrace, in his uplifting grasp? How do you find yourself walking hand in hand with the Creator God of the universe? How do you find yourself in his home? Be observant. Ra'ah. Observe and understand. Inspect and perceive. Because if you are observant, if you're one of those who cares about the ood, the ongoing, the enduring, and restoring testimony that Yahowah is providing, then he will view you as important. He's going to pay attention to you. He's going to prefer you, and he is going to grasp hold of you before the political and religious, the patriotic, the intoxicated are washed away, before they're trampled down and swept away. This is his promise of Teruah. This is the upcoming festival that's on our horizon, one of very few left between now and the beginning of the tribulation. God is once again affirming that there will be a harvest of covenant souls, that they will not be here as religion and politics and militaries are trodden down. They will not be here as all vestiges of religion are wiped away. He then says he swallows her up, accepting and embracing her, providing her with a protective covering which makes her one with him. He engulfs her. He conceals her. He engages in an intimate association with her, making her part of him and his person. This is addressing Bokurim, the feminine of Bokur, the firstborn children. With Bokurim, with these firstborn children, Yahowah is saying that he's going to accept them, he's going to embrace them, he is going to make them one with him. So here's Yahowah saying that he's going to make us one with him, that he personally, just before the summer fruit is harvested, and this is those who endure the summer, who awaken to the harvest from Kutz, waking up to the time of grieving, of the time of sickness and dread. So this is those who are called home, who are brought home, who are rescued just before the tribulation begins. This gives you an insight. The use of Kutz, this idea of summer fruit, of someone who has endured the summer. You know, the summer, the heat of the summer typically ends in mid to late September, which is when Teruah occurs, who awaken to the harvest. Teruah is a harvest, who would awaken up to the time of grieving, of abhorrence, of sickness and dread, the time of the thorn. You know, Paul twice said that the thorn in his side was a demon from Satan. In fact, Yosha specifically says that the thorn is symbolic of Hasatan. So this is the time of Satan, of time of where people are abhorred, a time of grieving. And it's just before that time that we are harvested, which would speak highly in favor of the Teruah harvest immediately before the tribulation begins, which would be in 2026. He says, beneficially and relationally, Asher, he will look upon and find delight in Ra'ah, those who are observant and understand. Ra'ah, the observant. You know, Yahowah reciprocates. Pay attention to him, he'll pay attention to you. Closely examine and carefully consider his word, he will closely examine and carefully consider you and apply his word to you. According to her repetitive and restoring witness, the set-apart spirit does not have an independent witness. Her testimony is ongoing because Yahowah's Torah, prophets, and Psalms are ongoing. Her testimony is restoring because his testimony is restoring. It's his Ud, Yahowah's, the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, that endures and that restores, and she provides additional insights, enlightenment, understanding regarding his Torah, prophets, and Psalms, so that we find ourselves in the palm of his hand. Then this, to further explain it, he swallows the Bokurim, the firstborn children, up, accepting and embracing the firstborn children, those who have benefited from Pesach, Matzah, and Bokurim, who are empowered on Shavuah and are now being harvested on Teruah. Swallows them up, makes them one with him. In that day, his day, Ba-ha, Yom Hu, in that day, in his day, Yahowah of the spiritual envoys, he will be a beautiful and valuable crown, a compass, while approaching with a splendor, adornment, which increases one's attractiveness and status, and move towards the remnant of his family. We actually become royal when you're adopted into Yahowah's family. You are his sons and daughters of the Creator and the owner of the universe, the only one with legitimate royal authority. And he approaches us to adorn us in a beautiful and valuable crown, surrounding our heads with a means of ennobling us and honoring us and authorizing us, approaching with a beautiful, attractive garment, an adornment, as he moves towards what's left of, the remnant, the remainder, the surviving, the left alive of his family, of his people. Those would be the members of the covenant, whom he will adorn on this day, who he will reach out and grasp hold of with the palm of his hand. He will approach as spirit to justly resolve the disputes which separate us, so that we can spend all eternity with him in his home. This is the approaching harvest. He's speaking of Torah. May Yah bless. We'll be back tomorrow.